One out of eight. It is a short documentary about following this woman in construction. And she describes how getting in the door was difficult for women in general. And you are always technically the first to lose the job, the last to be hired, because there's this perception that women shouldn't be in construction. And she goes into, the construction workers during 9/11. And a lot of times when you think of a first responder, you don't think of the construction workers, but a lot of the first responders would have not been able to get through, would have not been able to get to any of the people to save them had it not been for these construction workers. So technically, these teamsters and these construction workers that paved the way, that moved things out of the way, that, did what they needed to do to make a roadway in the midst of the rubble were first responders. And then in the rebuilding of New York after that, it's like you're rebuilding lives, you're rebuilding, the foundation of the city. And I just thought that was really interesting because no, I had never thought about what the construction workers went through, but they had to deal with the fumes in the same way that the first responders did and deal with the aftermath in the same way. Um, when she found that the construction had moments of lapse within consistency because as a woman the jobs were not always there, she found a way to turn her construction skills to stunt acting, and she was able to use a lot of the still skills such as hatchetry and things like that, and heavy lifting and just certain tools that she used during her construction time to become skills that she used during stunts. And it was just interesting how she was able to find a way to flourish and find something new that she loved despite the setbacks as being a woman in construction. I found it to be very inspiring.
This is regarding the short documentary, 1 out of 8. I really loved the content of this documentary, female-driven documentary. So quite honestly, the part about 911 was really enlightening too. I never really thought about what the construction workers also went through during that time. And I really loved the content, everything about it. The fact that this woman, this black female, powerful female woman, does construction and acting and stunts, and she has her female side and her masculine side. I think she's very in touch with it all, and she's well-rounded and really talented and amazing. I would never do construction where I'm up in the air that high, and heck no. But the only thing I have to say about it was that in a negative way, and it's not really even that negative, it's just the fact that it was presented in an odd way. I wasn't really sure. I felt like I was just kind of dropped into it, where I would have really have liked more of an introduction as to who this person was. So I got more of a feel of why it was being told. I know she mentioned, wanting to, I think being 1 out of 8 women somewhere, it's a statement on kind of being a powerful woman and a black woman, and being so good at what you do and everything. I just kind of felt like there was something missing as far as an introduction and a focus. Like, what are we focusing on as in this? Because I think that would have maybe tied it all together a little bit more. I just felt like it was kind of like, oh, that's interesting, and oh, that's really interesting, and then it ended, and I wasn't really sure what the point of it was. I mean, I was, but as far as like, I wish I had been more introduced to it and kind of had more of a, I guess, a flow that tied all the content together, because I really, really did like the content and learning that she does it all. I mean, doing stunts and construction and working 9/11 situation, all of that is very fascinating. So great job. I mean, I'm glad this was put out there. I hope it gets seen by a wide audience, and best of luck to you.
This film is called 1 out of 8. This is an inspiring U.S. short about a construction worker in New York City named Sias. I like the interviews with her. There are a few female and black construction workers where she is. Interesting title for the film, 1 out of 8. It was eventually law for there to be at least 1 out of 8 women in the construction industry. Lots of great footage of her at work at various tasks and great shots of New York skyline and cranes. There's heartbreaking footage of New York City when the towers went down on 9/11. She makes an excellent point that in addition to firefighters, construction workers were vital at ground zero and for rebuilding. I liked the upbeat soundtrack, and I enjoyed hearing about her transferable skills and work as an actor. Great film.
Watching 1 out of 8 was incredibly touching and inspiring. Hearing Sias tell her story about working in construction as a woman in construction, and not only that, but a Black woman in construction, was so eye-opening, and it really gave me food for thought and made me think about things I've never really considered before. And the shots were beautiful, seeing her different types of work, and particularly the shots of 9/11. It was poignant and moving, and it stayed on theme and showed us really that without construction workers, nothing would be possible. And the shots and transitions between Sias's construction work and her acting were beautifully done, and it really, tied the message of her and her story and how transferable her skills are really well. And it was beautiful and packed so much in 5 minutes, and I learned a lot.
The Kennedy Project was very interesting, showing this woman and, her life, her, world of construction and acting. I think, it's very interesting and it's done very well. Really shows, in the short amount of time, it shows who she is, and I think that's important and good.
This feels like the beginning of a wonderful documentary. It gives you a synopsis of her life story as a woman in construction, which is amazing because I love when women can break glass ceilings in male-dominated careers. But it tells her story where she goes, construction, was there for September 11th, and then is helped rebuild the new World Trade Center, and then say she's acting in stunt work. I want more. I want to know more about this woman. She sounds amazing, and while she probably wouldn't, I don't know if she'd think so herself, just the fact that she's breaking glass ceilings and doing more than one job makes her a hero. She's amazing. It's to the point where I really do. I want more of her life story. I want to see more of it to show what she does, going to work with her, acting a little bit, but I just want to know who she is, more about her. That's how wonderful I thought this was, and it does. It feels like a teaser for a longer documentary about this particular woman. Show us more, make more with her, expand it into a feature so we can see exactly who she is, because she's doing important work.
I loved 1 of 8. It was really interesting and eye-opening about the construction field and the laborer field, and even women's roles in it. I loved that we get her perspective and how she chose the career and why she's interested in it, and what it means even from a political perspective of having more women represented in laboring, and also even the rest of her story that she shares and other experiences, including rebuilding and clearing during 9/11. It was a really interesting documentary, very eye-opening. I highly recommend it, and I think it'd be great wider spread even.
All right, I just finished watching 1 out of 8, which was a really interesting documentary based around a young woman named Rose, who was one of the only Black and female construction workers in New York City. I thought it was such a great piece because the lead subject was such a fascinating figure. She had such a diverse background. I think she worked in movies, she did stunt work, as well having a really interesting idea of how working in construction was really powerful, not just for her personally, but for changing interpersonal dynamics between her and her male coworkers as well as her female coworkers, and just sort of renegotiating how women are viewed in general and how they take up space in particular relationships and in workspaces. I thought it was a really interesting dynamic because you don't normally see this type of concept, and I don't really know personally that many women that work in construction or in these fields, which I think was the point of such a documentary, to give light to these people. So in that sense, I thought it was very powerful. It was very well done. All the shots of New York City and all the music that was used to tie the concept together was very appropriate. And in general, I enjoyed the piece and thought it was quite informative and inspirational. So it was good.